It was supposed to be a normal Formula One race weekend. The sun was out. The grandstands were packed. The world's greatest drivers had gathered at one of the fastest, most unforgiving circuits in Europe, Imola. But something felt off. Two terrifying incidents had already rocked the paddock. Drivers were shaken, engineers were scrambling, and one man, Formula One's biggest star, was quietly battling doubts of his own. He got into the car anyway. What happened next left the motorsport world stunned. Born in Sao Paulo in 1960, Ayrton Senna didn't look like a future world champion. As a child, he struggled with motor skills. Doctors called him a slow developer, but by age 4, he was already steering his father's Jeep around their property, and by 7, he was racing go-karts. What started as a hobby quickly revealed something rare. Ayrton wasn't just fast, he was different. Smooth, relentless, obsessed with precision. At 13, he won the South American Karting Championship. Then came a move to England, where he dominated the fiercely competitive world of Formula Ford and Formula 3, taking on the best young drivers in the world and beating them with clinical consistency. In 1984, he made his F1 debut, and within a single season, everyone knew his name. By the early 90s, Ayrton Senna was already a 3-time world champion, a national hero in Brazil, and a global icon. His rivalry with Alain Prost had become legendary. His wet weather drives were the stuff of myth, and his focus, unbreakable. But with every race, the danger grew. Senna wasn't just chasing championships anymore. He was pushing for something more, perfection at the edge of human control. And in 1994, that pursuit would take him to a race weekend unlike any he had ever faced. The 1994 San Marino Grand Prix began like any other Formula One weekend. But by Friday afternoon, the signs were clear. This race was already cursed. During the first qualifying session on April 29th, young Brazilian driver Rubens Barrichello lost control of his car while attacking a curb at full speed. The car launched into the air, hit the tire wall, flipped violently, and came to rest upside down. Barrichello was unconscious. His tongue had blocked his airway. Medics had to act fast just to keep him breathing. He survived, but it shook the paddock. Mechanics went silent. Drivers exchanged looks, but they didn't speak aloud. It had been a long time since anyone had seen a crash that violent, but it was only the beginning. The next day, Saturday, qualifying resumed. Austrian driver Roland Ratzenberger, preparing for what would have been only his second Formula One start, ran over a curb and unknowingly cracked his front wing. On the next lap, at nearly 190 miles per hour, the wing failed entirely. With no downforce, his car plowed straight into a concrete wall. The session was stopped. Medics rushed in, but it was already too late. Ratzenberger was pronounced dead at the scene, the first F1 driver to die during a Grand Prix weekend in 12 years. Back in the paddock, a visibly shaken Ayrton Senna sat alone in the Williams motorhome. He didn't know Ratzenberger well, but something about it hit him hard. Witnesses said he cried. Dr. Sid Watkins, F1's chief medical officer and Senna's longtime friend, approached him gently. He urged Ayrton to skip the race, to walk away just for a while. Senna shook his head. By race day, the mood at Imola was off, tense. Like the air itself knew something was about to snap. Senna lined up on pole position, with Michael Schumacher, rising star of Benetton, just behind him. But as the lights went out and the cars surged forward, disaster struck before the first lap even finished. Two cars collided almost immediately. Debris flew through the air, shards of carbon fiber, chunks of bodywork. One piece cleared the fence and hit a spectator. Another injured a track marshal. The safety car was deployed. The pack slowed. For 6 laps, the field circulated behind a car far slower than an F1 machine. It seemed like a routine cleanup, but it had consequences no one foresaw. Formula One tires are designed to operate at blistering temperatures. Behind the safety car, they cooled rapidly. That loss of heat meant a drop in tire pressure and a lower ride height, bringing the cars dangerously close to the ground. On lap 7, the green flags waved again. The safety car pulled in. The race resumed. Senna led the pack, Schumacher just behind. The two raced toward the Tamburello corner, a sweeping left-hander taken flat out, with no runoff and a concrete wall just feet from the asphalt. Drivers had voiced concerns about it for years. Nothing had changed. Senna's car approached the bend at nearly 190 miles per hour. No lift, total commitment. Then, something went wrong. The onboard footage shows the car jolt. The front end dips. For a second, the steering appears frozen. The car shoots offline and onto the grass at impossible speed. No correction, no control. The Williams FW16 slammed into the wall at 135 degrees, traveling at 131 miles per hour. The nose cone disintegrated, a tire flew, the suspension snapped, and one arm of the front assembly shot backward through the cockpit. From the pit wall, Schumacher saw it all. The world's greatest driver was sitting motionless in a broken shell of carbon fiber, and no one knew if he was alive. The track fell silent. Marshals sprinted to the wreckage. Medical teams arrived within seconds. Senna wasn't moving. But his eyes were open. His chest was rising. To many watching on the broadcast, it looked like he might be conscious. There was even a faint twitch of his head, enough to give fans around the world a fragile sliver of hope. But the doctors on the scene knew better. Sid Watkins, the same neurosurgeon who'd pleaded with Senna to sit this one out, was one of the first to reach the car. What he saw was devastating. Though the chassis, F1's so-called survival cell, had remained mostly intact, a piece of the suspension had broken loose during impact, pierced Senna's helmet, and struck his skull with unimaginable force. It had caused a massive skull fracture, likely instantaneously traumatic. Still, medics fought to stabilize him. A medical helicopter landed on the track. He was loaded in and airlifted to Maggiore Hospital in Bologna. At 6 p.m., after several hours of emergency care, Ayrton Senna was pronounced dead. He was just 34 years old. The world didn't find out immediately. Reporters waited. Rumors swirled. Teams raced on, unaware of the truth. Even as Michael Schumacher stepped onto the podium as race winner, no one could celebrate. There was no joy, only silence. And behind that silence, one question began to form. How did this happen? In the days that followed, Formula One was in crisis. This wasn't a rookie in an underfunded car. This was Ayrton Senna, a master of control, in a top-tier machine, crashing on a corner he'd taken hundreds of times before. It didn't add up. The definitive cause of the crash has never been publicly confirmed. Maybe it was the weld. Maybe it was the tires. Maybe it was all of it. Or maybe Senna's last race was always doomed. The day after Senna's death, the F1 paddock gathered for the next scheduled Grand Prix at Monaco. There were no race cars on the grid. Just two empty spaces marked with the names Ayrton Senna and Roland Ratzenberger. A moment of silence was held before the race, but the silence that followed would echo for years. Senna's funeral in Brazil was a state event. His coffin was paraded through Sao Paulo, followed by millions in the streets. Fighter jets flew overhead. Schools closed. The nation mourned as one. F1, meanwhile, was forced to face its reckoning. Tamburello Corner was permanently changed, converted into a chicane to slow cars down. Cockpit protection was reinforced, and crash structures redesigned. The Grand Prix Drivers Association, dormant since the 1980s, was revived. Drivers demanded more say in safety decisions, and they got it. Today, no single event in modern motorsport has done more to reshape how Formula One protects its drivers than that tragic weekend at Imola. Senna's legacy lives on through more than just races and records. His foundation, the Instituto Ayrton Senna, has helped educate millions of Brazilian children, continuing his quiet charity work that most people never saw when he was alive. But among fans, teammates, and rivals alike, one truth remains. Senna didn't just race, he transcended racing. Ayrton Senna didn't just drive fast, he drove with purpose, with obsession, with a kind of faith behind the wheel that made fans believe he wasn't just controlling the car, he was connected to it. He chased perfection in every corner, and in doing so, he pushed the entire sport forward. But it wasn't just his talent that made him a legend. It was his heart, his humility, the way he carried the hopes of millions, especially back home in Brazil, on his shoulders without ever asking for applause. Senna's final race ended in tragedy, but the changes that followed saved countless lives. His death forced Formula One to confront the dangers it had ignored for too long. In a way, he did what he always did. He led from the front.